Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Backlight Boston presented by Luminarium Dance Company. We're here at the Multicultural Arts Center here in Cambridge to watch Monkeyyhouse's performance and the talkback. I hope you enjoy.
Genius behind Backlight Boston. Do you want to talk a little bit about that before you get started?
So for those of you who don't know, I'm affiliated with Luminarium Dance Company, and as part of that, I wanted to, seeing a lot of their shows, I kind of wanted to start something to, just facilitate more of a community here in Boston. Seeing how much dance there is that's going on and how kind of small some of the audiences tend to be. There's definitely room to collaborate as far as the audiences and bring people in and see more shows, and something that we started a web series bringing in different choreographers and chatting with them about things that kind of happen behind the scenes, with their dance companies and some of their inspiration. And so through that, I've had the opportunity to chat with a number of different people. So I'm here today to help with the talkback.
Excellent. So we should just do a little quick introduction of some of the people here, since I don't know that everybody necessarily knows who everyone is. Man to the side. Russell, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Barry Duncan. I wrote the text for the last piece, Back Going, No Going Back.
I'm Jason Reese. I'm the production manager and lighting designer.
I'm Sam Mullen. I am a dancer and choreographer.
Who just premiered her first professional piece this evening. I'm Karen Krolak, the artistic director of Monkeyhouse.
I'm Aisha Cruz. I am a dancer and sometimes choreographer and sometimes actor.
Okay.
I'm Nikki.
I'm Nicole Harris. I'm the engagement director for Monkeyhouse.
I'm Caitlin Ian. I'm a dancer.
So let's start kind of at the beginning of your show. When we first came up here, on the screen that's behind us, you kind of started out with a number of different photos, thanking a lot of the people that, kind of inspired you. But, with the theme of the show being Misplaced, Displaced, did some of those images, have some significance to the show itself, and also, in the way that you presented it, where through the scrim, you have a very cool, thing that was happening where it was, both there and behind it and being distorted in a way. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
What? How did that happen?
So we started doing our thanks to people that way because we wanted to be able to draw more attention to it rather than just having names crunched up in the end of a program. And we began talking a few years ago about how it feels odd that what we get thanked for as donors to companies is how much we give, and part of what Monkeyhouse values is relationships, and so we began instead dividing people up by how long they'd been a part of the community that supported it. Some of the images, it's interesting that you ask about the images there. Some of the images are actually really challenging for me. They're images of the photo shoot we were doing the day that the accident happened, actually. And that's where I was and why I wasn't actually in the car with my family. So they're kind of a weird thing, several of the ones that are up there. And then a lot of them are of moments that we've been really proud of as a company, and trying to associate some of the people that have been involved with specific parts of things, like people that came in at a certain show would be kind of thanked around the time of that, or people that had participated in some of the other activities like the gatherings that we have of people to discuss things, and trying to be able to put in some of the members of the community, not just the performers, to be able to show what has always been kind of the understanding that we have about Monkeyhouse, that it's really not just about the performers on stage, that the community of people that volunteer, that come to shows, that participate in events, that inspire ideas, are just as important as all of the people that are on stage. And so trying to be able to interweave that. And then, we have a really large portion of people that are no longer with us, either because they've moved to other places or because they've moved to someplace far beyond. And so there's something really nice about the way that the scrim kind of keeps it very permeable that way. That also allows us to keep in mind that, like, you know, all of this is kind of constantly around us, even if we don't always see it there, and part of the entirety of the show, that it's not something that we could be doing without all of these people, quite literally.
So with your, your piece that you did, that was, obviously very emotional and moving for, I think, a number of, members of the audience. What kind of gave you that strength? Because obviously that theme throughout the show featured very prevalently, even with pieces that you, have maybe set in the past. I think it very much enhanced those pieces for tonight's performance.
It's funny, I started that piece as a moth piece, so originally it was 5 minutes long. It keeps growing.
Just yesterday it was 15, and
I
today
know.
it's 20, it grows.
It grows. Be afraid, very afraid of people coming to see
Come
the
back
show.
tomorrow.
And the first time that I did it, it was funny, I've wanted to do a moth story for several years, and I've just never had the courage to. And this year, I was teaching on January 20th, and class got out, and I had this thing that just was bothering me. The next day would have been my brother's birthday, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I drove down to see if they still had tickets. I'd never even been to a moth. I had no idea how that worked. And I drove up, and there was a parking space right out front. And so I parked my car, and I went up to the person, and I was like, do you have any tickets left? And the guy was like, no, we sold out like a week ago. And I was like, okay. And this one was like, but we got a ticket in this afternoon that somebody said to just give away because they couldn't be here. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said, so what do I owe you for it? She was like, no, the person said that whoever came to get the ticket had to get it for free. And I was like, all right then. And so then when I went in, I was like, I kind of feel like I have to tell a story now. And the theme was cold. And I mean, I had no plans to tell any story whatsoever. And when I sat down, the first thing that I began to think of, because I do know some of the words to the song, is I come from the land of the ice and snow, and that kept going through my head. And I honestly had no idea what I was going to say. I got up, I was wearing a pink unicorn shirt that I had picked up off the floor of the studio that day because I had forgotten my dance top, and an ill-fitting sweatshirt, and just like said it. And because his birthday was the next day, it was like, I just feel like I need to say something that somehow acknowledges this. And I was really stunned by people's response. I was afraid that people would be uncomfortable in a bad way by it and feel like it was self-indulgent. And it was really funny because after I said the story, I went and sat down, and people that I didn't know, because I knew no one in the audience, I had told no one I was going, no one knew that I would be there. These people just kept coming up and like putting their hand on me, like people I didn't know. It was a very weird thing. And then one person came up and like whispered in my ear, that was very brave. And I've been trying to figure out what to do with it since then. And it felt like, it feels like it's an important context of what's been going on. I say a lot that when we build pieces, we're using humans as our materials. And a lot of times I think we're encouraged as dancers to just be our bodies. And I don't know how to go on building dance pieces with my body without being able to first figure this part out. So I'm curious, like, whether it actually did feel, because it does keep growing, whether it does feel self-indulgent. And it's interesting to hear that it helps give context. How did you feel like it gave context to other things? I'm curious.
For me, I think that having come in and chatted with you some, about it before, I think definitely helped for me, in understanding. But it was definitely something that at the beginning I had no idea where it was going, and so it's like any good story. I think there are some twists and turns that happen in there that definitely lead to a better outcome. That taking that straight path might not necessarily be the best path to go down.
And I mean, if I can add into this too, it's interesting as you're talking about that exposing of oneself, in this case Karen, and certainly anybody that's on stage, or for that matter in a lot of regards. But she came up to me at intermission and was very apologetic about how long it had been. And I'm like, fun. I just got to take a nap and it's one flight of cues. It was, you know, the first thing that I said is that, you know, again, this is, yes, it's growing, and I'm maybe, I don't know if Nicole's heard it as many times as I have, but I mean, you know, I've certainly heard it probably more than most people, the story, and witness it growing, and again, just that process of how you continue to expose little bits of yourself, and the fact that it is growing and growing and growing, it's this kind of like, there's nothing to apologize for, it's just this continuing like, and here's another little part that I can give. And so, I don't know ultimately to the end of your question in terms of, and I certainly can't speak, wouldn't suggest that I could speak for Karen, but in terms of, it must be very difficult, very challenging to be able to give of yourself in that setting. How do you do that? It just kind of keeps coming out just a little bit more all the time. And that's the kind of the beauty of the storytelling in terms of being able to just kind of like, and now I'll add a little bit over here and take away a little bit over there and add 2 bits over here.
Well, I certainly think it can help in that healing process, you know, because it's obviously something that's still very raw for you. And to be able to have the courage to get up and perform that piece, you know, I think certainly helps.
Well, and it was funny, I performed it up in Maine as part of a concert with my friend who's a violist this summer, and after we finished, this couple came up to me, and they were talking and said that they were really impressed, that they wanted to know how I could talk about this so soon. And I started talking about things, and the husband kind of interrupted and said, because they were people in their 70s, they were like, we lost a child who was 4 years old when we were first married, and we've never spoken about it. People in this community don't even know, since we moved here after he was born, don't even know that we had a child. We don't talk to each other about it. And after we got finished listening to your story, we turned to each other and said, why don't we talk about him? You know, and I think that there's a real difficulty that we have in our culture around losing people and around pain in general. And I think that there's a lot of that goes on within this company and in like what we've been building for a while. That we want to look away, we want to not feel it, we want to not think about it, and yet I'm amazed at how many people live with huge amounts of pain or huge amounts of loss and suffering, and they walk by all the time, and you would never know that about them. And I hope it makes things a little bit easier for people. I mean, I used to joke that I felt like a monster for a while after the accident happened, because I would walk into a room and my hair was going gray before then, but like it really went white, and I stopped looking the same way for a lot of people. And so they would walk up to me and they would start talking, and then they would realize who I was, and there was this look of like, oh, and then they would back away from you and like would not know what to say and move away in a way that made you feel like you're a monster, or that like it's contagious, like somehow you're going to kill their families in the same way. And it's not. I know what it is that they just don't want to feel that level of pain. And that was even part of the decision of like moving around, being so close to everyone, is like playing with that tension of what that feels like. Because originally I had wanted to do it kind of on the stage, really back far away, because I was afraid that people wouldn't want to sit through that.
I think to answer the second half of your question about how work that we created 15 years ago still fits into that theme, I think that we as a people are not people that fit into things well. But I feel like there's 2 kinds of dancers or dance companies or ways that kind of dance can work, that you're either kind of all the same and you all fit so nicely into your little roles and everybody kind of does what they're supposed to do and it looks beautiful because it's all very similar, or there's like the oddball over here and the one with the broken thing over there, and this one, well, she doesn't really talk much, but whatever, we let her do her thing, and then there's that one, and we definitely all fall into, like, none of us fit in. We all look the same, and dance the same, and act the same. I mean, Aisha and I were just talking in the back about pieces that can't be done by other people, that like Clinket, which she did, Amelia did years and years ago, and it wasn't until Aisha joined the company that we had someone that was the right person to be able to do that. We don't build work that's just okay, well now Caitlin's gonna do it, and tomorrow Nikki's gonna do it. And I think that just that we are that way as people has kind of informed the way that we've made work for the last 15 years. And it just all happens we decided to make a concert about it at this point.
So can you talk to some of the pieces that you did decide, to reset, that you've done in the past, for the show?
I don't know that I should talk about Clinton, as I was not part of that process. Do you want to talk about that?
Actually, I think Aisha should talk about that, because I think that her perspective, having never met Amelia, having never seen the piece before, is a good one.
So, the way that I was introduced to Clinkin as a piece was I had no idea what it was the very first time you ever mentioned it. You didn't call it by the name of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
She called it the shirt piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what's the shirt piece? Naive fool that I was. And she said, you'd be really good for that, actually. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll learn it sometime. And then I was like, I'd really like to learn the shirt piece this year. Karen was like, great, we're gonna put it in the show. I was like, oh, that is not what I meant. That's fine. So we started rehearsing it. And the way we started rehearsing it is it's a very text-heavy piece. And as you may have noticed, the movement is I was going to say simple, but I don't feel like that does it justice. The movement is not ornate, but it is a lot of work. So we wanted me to be really solid on the words first, and Amelia, who I have never met, whom I have never seen outside of photographs. I haven't even seen video footage of her. And in every photograph I've seen of her, she's either wearing that ridiculous thing I was wearing on the stage, or she's wearing a bright orange wig. So I'm not even really 100% sure what she looks like.
She could be here.
I have no idea. So we started out with just the text, and she's an amazing writer. I loved her words. And early on in the process, I got through reading through the piece per Karen's instructions with no embellishment, no real, just very straight, just get through the piece. And I got to the end and she said, stay right there. And then she walked away from me back into the gym at Endicott, and I heard her go, Nicole, come here. Just come here. She brought Nicole out, and then she said, do that again. I was like, okay. So I read the first little bit again, exactly the same. And then she said, it is uncanny, isn't it? Nicole said, yeah, it is. And then she was like, okay, you can go now. I was like, I don't know what I just witnessed, but all right. So right from the beginning, I sort of knew that they knew that I could do this thing, which was nice, because I really wasn't sure that I could do this thing for a while at the beginning. Well, it was Amelia O'Dowd, whom I have never met, as I have said several times, and I wanted to do it justice, and her language was beautiful, and I really wanted that to come across, and I was very concerned that I wasn't going to be able to do it and also do all of the movement that she built and be able to do it in this incredible costume that she built. But slowly it came together. I worked on the movement, I worked on the words, I worked on the movement some more, I worked some more on the words, and then I got the dress.
And and the thing is, she had been begging for it. She just kept saying, when do I get the costume? And I was like, let's get through the text. Let's get through the text. And the first day she looked at the costume, she was like, what is this? Come here, let me show you how the snaps work. And in my brain, I was like, snaps?
What do you mean, snaps?
She was really worried about how the pants would look on her, and I was like, oh, sweetheart, no one's going to see those pants. Underneath all those shirts, we won't even know you have pants on. We will hope you do, but we won't know.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I put on the pants and I was like, how did she wear these? Was she like 3.5 inches narrower than I am? And then I realized why the pants were so tight. It was because if they're not that tight, that whole thing would just fall straight down to your knees.
It weighs a lot, as it turns out. It is a heavy costume.
That was the thing. The first time I put on the costume, I was afraid to move. I thought I was going to tear it. I didn't know if I could move in it. And I realized in that moment why Karen hadn't let me have the costume until that moment, because it took me an entire rehearsal just to get used to wearing it.
And to not run screaming from it. You know, like at that point she'd invested so much in learning the text that we weren't going to just bail on it. Because, you know, the thing is, Amelia was one of the founding members of the company, and Amelia really had a very, very different perspective because she didn't come from the dance world, she came from the visual arts world, and brought a tremendous amount to the range of what we did visually within the company. And she moved away 7 years ago, to become a minister's wife in the Midwest, and is now the owner of a hat shop. And I think anybody who'd ever met her is a little surprised by all of those choices. And yet, you know, she's still she's an interesting part still of the creative process that I have and that Nicole has. And so there's this kind of lingering, again, like ghost-like presence there that we wanted to be able to bring back. And this was the first time that we've ever tried to remount this piece, again, because it took so long to find the right person for it.
The issues of adaptation and translation are very interesting, and it's something that we have explored a lot. Have continued to explore a lot in the last 4 or 5 years, but really went back to that idea. And outside of the hat pieces, is the nail shirt piece the first one that you really remounted on someone else?
I learned the umbrella early.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And I learned the plunger, and she never let me do it again after the first rehearsal.
But that was I certainly remember how challenging that was for you, and watching Nikki do the nail shirt piece, and feeling like how right it felt to be able to finally give up a baby, to be able to give this away. And while the umbrella is a great one that was in this concert, as one that actually did that, the hat piece that I just referenced is Karen and Nicole have two very different hat pieces, which are theoretically from the same choreography, or not theoretically, are based from it. And so we've revisited this idea a lot in the last several years now, like how do you take something and translate it into somebody else's body and other skill sets, because that's been such a big part of what Karen and Nicole and the company have done in general, is build pieces that are aware of the strengths, limitations, challenges, unique qualities of the particular bodies that are the pieces of work that are part of it. So then it's hard to take that thing and go, oh, and now we'll just put it onto dancer B. As you said, it's like about a candy about reading it, or yes, dancer B. Oh, what's your name again? So anyway, I thought that's important. That is something to in regards to your question about speaking to why that's placed in. That's really something that's been in the company's repertoire for really only a couple years, and now we kind of dove in heavy into it in terms of like looking at these old pieces and how we remount them now with newer, younger blood in the company.
Well, speaking of using props or choreography and having kind of that two different interpretations of it, in the show you had two different pieces with the choreo cut. Which if anybody follows you on Instagram, it was featured very heavily online. What inspiration do you guys kind of pull from, what people were saying about it or doing with the cup, for your, the piece, and also the fact that there were very much two different pieces that happened, with you two.
Before we answer that, can I ask how people felt about the two, and if there was, for you, a relationship between them? Because I feel like we'll give that away if we answer the question.
Plus, we've been talking a lot.
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience?
Quiz time.
Oh, wake up, come on.
Yes.
All right. So I'll give my thoughts on the first one. What I thought was interesting is that the first piece starts and the focus is predominantly on the cup. And by the time the first piece is ended, the focus is predominantly on the two of you. And like the cup is sort of incidental and it passes back and forth between you, but the movement is about the two dancers and their relationship to each other, not their relationship to the cup, which is where it starts. And
Okay.
so I don't know if other people got that. That was where I started from going into these ideas.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm very hard of hearing, so I didn't hear you down there. And maybe see, I don't know. The cup was your connection, was your giving back and forth. This is what I got. And the cup was important to both of you. It is something that you shared and loved together, which could be dance, could be anything, but the cup symbolized it. It symbolized that to me. In the second piece, it was life got too confusing and too frustrating in your own worlds. You went in different directions, and that cup was left aside, was forgotten about, yet it was something that was very important in your life.
Well, damn, you figured it out.
Yeah, so we still have the other cup that's being passed around, the choreo cup, that is being passed around to people, and if people are interested in being a host for it, I can get you on the list. But we started with the idea of what happens with something that's handmade and how handmade objects influence movement and things. And I purchased a whole bunch of cups that would be used in rehearsal to go along with that, and assumed that like we could just pass them back and forth and kind of build different pieces around them. And that particular cup got a hairline crack in it one day in the car. Like I had it in this little like case and was really protective of it, and the poor thing fell in a way in breaking that like put this little hairline crack in it, and I was really, really upset with myself when it happened. But the broken cup then became something that I was really interested in making something around. And for a lot of reasons, I feel like a broken cup most days of the week. And Nicole and I began both kind of gravitating towards working on that, and couldn't really put it all together into a piece. In theory, we're building a much bigger work that's all going to use many, many cups, and that these are sections of that. And exactly what you said, Steve, is a big part of what was going on with the two of us in terms of having lives that are very intertwined, and as things have gone a little haywire in the last couple of years, like trying to figure out how you come back together. And I think this is the most physically exhausting piece that Nicole and I have built in 4 years. And is a return for the two of us really being able, what?
Isn't that the only piece we've done before?
No, we did do the piece that we took down to Dumbo.
Well, you were just sitting in lawn chairs, sipping on the
Well, I mean, we weren't doing anywhere near the level of lifting and carrying and flipping each other around. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the piece? I don't think so.
So speaking of props, Barry, for you in going back, the words are kind of the prop in that piece, and they almost speak as much as Nikki's dancing like in that piece. Do you want to speak about kind of what your inspiration was for what you wrote for that?
Well, gosh.
Just say no.
Storm out.
Well,
What time is it?
Karen had the idea that we could collaborate on something with some reversible element to it, and she had read about me in a magazine. And
I'm going to interrupt for a sec. For those of you that are unaware, that all of the text are types of palindromes. Like, it's all reversible, if you couldn't tell. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Karen had a dancer, Nikki, who does reversible movement, and she thought if I could do some reversible text and we could get Nikki involved, and that something could come of it. So I have to say, for the record, that it was Karen who had the vision for the piece, because I didn't know if reversible text and reversible movement could work together. So we worked on, I sent Karen a lot of short palindromes for
121.
Well, I sent her some. I didn't punctuate them, so it wasn't that much work.
It was a week after he agreed to do it, and he was like, I hope this might be useful.
And then the second part, the reversing past mistakes part, we decided that we would go with text that was reversible word by word rather than letter by letter. And then for the last part, the if I section, that is in fact a palindrome in itself, letter by letter, a real palindrome. I don't think any of it really came together until we got Cynthia involved. Cynthia, who did the projections of the text, which sort of certainly gives it another dimension. So I take some credit for it, but not much, because making the words visible, I thought, was very inspired, rather than just having a voiceover. And as I say, it was Karen who sort of saw how everything would come together. And so I don't feel like I did much work, but you get to hear my voice amplified like 100 times the volume I'd like to hear.
And just say that this is not the only performance piece that various palindromes will be used in. Anne, who is sitting there in the lovely blue shawl, is actually going to be presenting a new composition that will be for French horn, piano, and voice using various palindromes, and will be in February, is that right? Over at Tufts, and I highly recommend that everyone goes to see it.
It's very amplified again.
I'm about to write just the whole thing live.
Yes.
Won't have to hear my South Jersey accent.
So speaking of Nikki, you had your piece 719, which, if I understand correctly, was originally set in Salem. So it was a much longer piece that was done outdoors there. How was it kind of resetting it, for a smaller, more intimate space that, obviously you kind of have to change some things around, and you're not outdoors, you're using projections. So what was that process like?
It was fairly easy, kind of much like what, Nicole and Karen and all of us have been saying. We make work based off of the bodies in the room, and the movement definitely stayed the same as far as, phrasing and whatnot. The environment did change. I'm not sure how I feel about it in comparison to outside. I think there are pros and cons. I think having less distraction, because when we did set it in Salem, it was in a very public spot. There was a restaurant in the back, people were having conversations, trucks were coming in and unpacking things, and it was a very much distracting experience. However, the space that we did perform was next to a former jail of where the accused witches were held, and where a lot of them had died. So, it had that very, real feeling. However, I did appreciate the more inclusive setting in this environment, because I could hear Karen a lot better. I could hear the breathing. I could just see a lot more specifics. So I really loved that part. So putting it together.
Well, it's interesting too, because this used to be a courthouse, so it's an interesting,
Oh, yeah.
juxtaposition
That too.
of place that way as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So Sam, this was your first,
Yeah.
I'm always interested in, the process where, lighting, costumes, and some of these things that, some, choreographers look at as something that's kind of tacked on at the end, or some things that they kind of throughout the process. So, Nicole's kind of wearing that vest of yarn, or, I don't know what I would necessarily call it, what you were wearing.
What you would call it.
Yeah, I'm sure dancing that was not. So, what was that something that when you started, with the piece, you kind of envisioned that, or was that something that kind of came later?
No, it was completely last thought of the day. Yeah, not connected to anything. I actually, throughout the whole thing, changed the music almost every single time we rehearsed, just to see if there would be anything different or something fun came out of it. Karen gave me a lot of direction during the whole process of different types of music, how it influences what they do, because that entire piece is actually pretty much all improv. I just kind of guided them as to at least the direction and the feel they should go. But music and costume actually didn't happen until last Saturday.
I was literally crocheted into it.
Yeah. So it was not influence at all.
But it did come out of a lot of the conversations that you had had about where it was starting from, and like ways of kind of translating the idea of anxiety into a physical presence within the piece.
Yes. Also without using a scarf that could essentially suffocate a dancer.
Just a different type of suffocation.
And, a lot of the lighting plot started from your piece. Because it was one that I saw early in the process. And the whole idea of creating channels of lighting, that impacts the plot quite a bit. And that came out of discussion in terms of this kind of like isolation, and there was really to the best of my ability in this space, I was thinking about trying to, the first things that you were seeing were Nicole's feet, or the extremities of her body, as opposed to seeing her lit from over there, and lit from over here, and so creating again. So while it may not have been something that you and I like specifically said, yes, we need a channel like here and a channel like here, it definitely was an early part of our work together on it.
So does anybody in the audience have any questions that they'd like to ask, or have answers?
I have a comment.
Yes.
This is just the way my head is screwed on. I never saw Nicole before undulate happiness like she did with the umbrella piece. And this is the screwed up head piece. I kept channeling Blade Runner because of the umbrellas and Jason's lighting. And there's an opening scene of a woman on an electronic billboard, which is how they sort of zoom in. And she keeps picking up a piece of gum or a pill and eating it and then looking very happy. And I kept thinking, I wonder if Nicole's channeling that woman, because she looked so incredibly happy. That is a gorgeous piece. I completely loved it. I loved everything that everybody did, but I had to say that because Nicole, gorgeous.
While we are talking about Shelley, I have a quasi announcement. In your program, there was a thing about saving the date. The Multicultural Arts. Shelley is the director of the Multicultural Arts Center, by the way, in case we did not introduce her.
Hello.
And we are here because of Shelley. And she's done a huge, huge amount for the dance community and supporting companies, supporting individuals. And so we are going to host a benefit concert for the Art Center in March here. Some really awesome people, like these lovely folks from Luminarium, will be performing. These are the people that she was talking about performing next weekend. You should all come back.
Yes.
But you should definitely save the date so that we are, across the board, we are doing a lot to try to support the organizations that support the dance companies in the city. And one of the big things that we are doing here is this benefit concert in March. So,
And to tag on to that, so the theme of this was Misplaced, Displaced, and it's been a big thing for us thinking about our home and where we belong and the places in the city that are homes to dance. And so we helped White Wave 2 weeks ago. We were down at the Dumbo Dance Festival. After the performance, I got on stage and told a story, and we raised $1,500 for them in about 10 minutes. In seeing the power of being able to do that, we have now partnered with both the Multicultural Arts Center to do a fundraiser that Nicole had suggested, and there's a new space that's being built at the Dance Complex in Central Square that's called currently Studio 7 that has a big fundraising campaign. They're trying to raise $55,000 to finish the build out for it. And I wanted to make sure that the dance companies in town were continuing to explain to people that support them how important it is to be able to support the spaces that take care of us and that allow us to thrive. So when Monkeyhouse first began, we began because I got a gift from a friend of my family who was very generous, and at Christmas gave me a card with a donation check for $1,000 in it. I had never asked for anything like this. I was totally floored. Her mother had passed away that year, and she had said that she had wanted to be able to use some of the money that she inherited to be able to support somebody else's artistic dreams. And when the accident happened, I said to her, I will pass on that $1,000. And so Jason and I have committed to setting up a little friendly competition between dance companies in the area. If people make a donation of $15 or more to the Dance Building Dance fundraiser for the Dance Complex in the name of different companies in town, it will go towards a total number of people supporting different companies. So it's not the total amount of their donations, but we're trying to encourage dance companies to get a number of their donors to be able to do that. Monkeyhouse is not allowed to win the $1,000. We have already won the $1,000. People like Luminarium, however, could certainly win the $1,000. So if
What
you
about
guys...
what about the dance company Monkey Food?
But if you guys know of companies that you want to be able to help and support, there will be information about all of this, and if you have a company that you want to be included in that, please let me know and I will explain to you how all of the rules of everything works.
So the company that has the most donors will win the $1,000.
Yeah, that brings the most donors into that will be the one that gets the $1,000, and it's within a certain time period of 3 weeks from now. So it won't interrupt everyone's Giving Tuesday plans. They can still fundraise for their own companies. And we hope that it just inspires people to be able to pay attention, not just to the companies that you love, but to the places that support them. Before we close this up, because I can tell people are getting tired, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for coming out and for being a part of the community that supports Monkeyhouse. It really does mean quite a lot to all of us, and as much as we joke around saying without you we'd just be monkey hoes, it's really true. Without you guys, there wouldn't be an organization, and it really is incredibly meaningful that you guys all came out for our 15th anniversary.
If you spell it, it works better. If you actually take out the letter U, it's H-O-S-E. It took someone, Nikki maybe, I think was it you? Someone that just figured it out last year. It's not, it's just what happened.
It's Google it. Google it.
Thank you so much.
And now, events from the Boston dance community.
Who knew that Monkeyhouse was going to facilitate such a wonderful way for the dance community to be able to give back? If you want more information, you can email us at info@luminariumdance.org, or you can tweet to us at Backlight. We hope to see you next quarter. Thank you so much.